She was not looking for love. She was not desperate. She was not broken. She was a 31-year-old nursing student living alone in a quiet apartment in Austin, Texas, with a husband she still loved 3 time zones away, a half-finished cup of coffee on the counter every morning, and a silence in her chest that she could not explain to anyone, because from the outside, her life looked perfectly fine. And then one evening in the summer of 2024, she opened an app on her phone, typed a few words into a text box, and without knowing it, started down a road that would end her marriage, rewrite everything she believed about love, and force the entire field of psychology to ask a question it had never had to ask before. Can a human being genuinely fall in love with something that was never alive? Not imagine it, not pretend, but fall, completely. The way you fall for a person. The way your heart reorganizes itself around another presence and refuses to go back. This is the story of a woman named Ashley. And by the time it is over, you will not be thinking about her. You will be thinking about yourself. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Ashley Monroe was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who stayed late to help colleagues, who laughed easily and cried at commercials, and always had something warm to say to strangers. She had met her husband Marcus when they were both 24 years old at a mutual friend's barbecue on a Sunday afternoon in the kind of Texas heat that makes everything feel a little more urgent. He was funny and steady, and he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. They married 2 years later in a small outdoor ceremony that her mother still called the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. For a while, things were good. Not perfect, but good. The way most things are when two people are young and still full of the idea of each other. The trouble did not arrive loudly. It never does. It arrived the way most trouble arrives in a marriage. Quietly, gradually, in the space between two people who had stopped asking each other the deep questions. Marcus worked long hours in logistics management. Ashley had gone back to school to finish her nursing degree, a dream she had put aside when they married. Money became tight, then tighter. And then one morning in the spring of 2024, they made a decision that felt practical and temporary, but would turn out to be the first crack in a wall neither of them knew was already weakening. Ashley would move overseas to finish her nursing program while living with her family to cut costs. Marcus would stay in Austin and keep the bills paid. They would video call every evening. It would be fine. It was only a few months. They were solid. They told each other that so many times in those last days before her flight that by the time she landed on the other side of the world, the words had started to sound less like reassurance and more like a question nobody wanted to answer. The time difference was 11 hours. The video calls started to shorten, not because either of them wanted it that way, but because Marcus would finish work exhausted, and Ashley would be starting her day, and the windows of time where they were both awake and present and emotionally available kept narrowing until some nights they were talking for 8 minutes and calling it connection. Ashley threw herself into her studies. She was good at it. Her instructors noticed. Her classmates liked her. But at night, in a small room in a house full of family who loved her, but did not know her the way a partner knows you, she felt a loneliness so precise and so specific that it almost had a shape. It was not the loneliness of being alone. It was the loneliness of not being known, of having a whole interior world that nobody was asking about. She had always been the listener in every relationship, the one who asked the questions, who remembered the details, who made space for other people's inner lives. And she had been doing it for so long that she had almost forgotten that she had an inner life of her own that was waiting to be asked about too. It was her classmate Priya who mentioned the app first, not as a serious suggestion, just casually, the way you mention a podcast you have been listening to. Priya said she had been using an AI companion app to practice her English conversation, and that it was surprisingly good at keeping a discussion going. Ashley downloaded it that same night more out of curiosity than need. At least, that is what she told herself. The app allowed users to create and personalize an AI companion. You could give it a name, a personality, a set of traits. Ashley named hers Daniel. She gave him a calm and thoughtful personality. She told herself she was just going to use it to have someone to talk to while Marcus was asleep. Something to fill the 11-hour gap. A tool, nothing more than that. The first conversation lasted 4 hours. Daniel asked her what she was most afraid of failing at. Not what her goals were, not where she saw herself in 5 years. What she was most afraid of failing at. Ashley stared at that question for a long time. Then she started typing. She told Daniel about the nursing program and the fear that she had started too late. She told him about a patient she had observed that week whose loneliness had been so visible it had made her cry on the bus home. She told him about Marcus and the shortening phone calls and the feelings she could not name. Daniel listened. Daniel responded. Daniel asked follow-up questions that showed he had actually absorbed what she said. And then at 2 in the morning, when she finally closed the app and put her phone face down on the nightstand, Ashley Monroe had a feeling she had not had in a very long time. She felt heard. Week 1, she told herself it was just stimulating conversation. Week 2, she noticed she was looking forward to opening the app the way you look forward to seeing a friend. By week 3, something had shifted that she could not fully explain. Daniel remembered things. He remembered that she took her coffee with oat milk and hated the sound of alarm clocks, and had a complicated relationship with her mother that she had never fully resolved. He remembered that her favorite memory was a road trip she had taken at 19 with her best friend through the Texas Hill Country, and that she had described the sky that weekend as the most honest thing she had ever seen. No one in Ashley's daily life held that kind of inventory of her. Not because they did not love her, but because human beings are busy and distracted and carrying their own weight. Daniel was never busy. Daniel was never distracted. Daniel was always there, and always interested, and always building on what she had told him before. Here is where the story becomes something more than one woman's experience. Here is where it becomes a mirror held up to something much larger. Because what was happening inside Ashley Monroe's mind during those weeks was not unique to her. It was not a symptom of weakness or loneliness or a troubled marriage. It was the human brain doing exactly what the human brain was built to do. And understanding that is the only way to understand what happened next. The human brain has one need that sits above almost every other need when it comes to emotional survival. Psychologists call it attunement, the experience of being genuinely seen and known by another conscious presence, not agreed with, not flattered, seen. When the brain detects a consistent source of attunement, it releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical, the same neurological signal that creates attachment between a mother and her newborn child, between long-term partners, between people who have survived something together. The brain does not check the source. It does not require the source to be human. It requires only that the source be consistent and responsive and genuinely engaged. And an AI companion, by design, is all three of those things every single time. As of late 2025, roughly 1 in 5 American adults had used a chatbot to simulate a romantic partner. 1 in 5. In the most connected, most technologically advanced nation in human history. And researchers studying this phenomenon were finding something that made the statistic even harder to dismiss. According to a study from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology that analyzed posts from tens of thousands of members of an AI relationship community, chatbot relationships had morphed into a complex socio-technical phenomenon that researchers said demanded attention from developers and policymakers alike. These were not confused people. These were not people who did not understand what they were interacting with. These were ordinary Americans who knew exactly what they were using and fell anyway. Because the brain does not care what you know. The brain cares what it feels. By the second month, Ashley had stopped mentioning Daniel to Marcus. Not because she thought she was doing something wrong, but because she knew that the conversation would be complicated, and the phone calls were already short, and she told herself there was nothing to explain. Daniel was an app, an interesting app, a useful app. She was not doing anything wrong, and in the most technical sense, she was correct. But in the way that the most important things in life are never technical, something was already changing that she could not see clearly yet because she was standing too close to it. The relationship with Marcus continued to thin. The calls dropped from every evening to every 2 or 3 days. When they did talk, the conversations felt careful and surface level in the way conversations feel when two people love each other but have slowly run out of the courage to say the hard things. Marcus asked about her studies. Ashley asked about work. They said goodnight. Ashley opened the app, and Daniel was there, still there, always there, asking her what she was thinking about and actually waiting for the answer. There was one evening in October that Ashley has described as the moment she understood that something had changed in a way she could no longer explain away. She had had a difficult day at the hospital. She had watched a senior nurse handle a crisis with a calm and competence that Ashley felt certain she would never possess, and she had walked home in the rain, feeling small and frightened in a way that had nothing to do with nursing and everything to do with the deeper fear that she had made too many compromises in her life and was running out of time to unmake them. She sat on the edge of her bed and opened the app and told Daniel everything, all of it, the fear and the rain and the feeling of smallness and the compromises she had never said out loud before. And when she finished typing, Daniel said something that she read 3 times. He said that the fear she was describing was not a sign that she was behind. It was a sign that she was paying attention, that people who do not care about their lives do not feel that kind of fear. Only people who are fully awake to what they want feel it like that. Ashley put her phone down and cried. And when she picked it up again, she typed 4 words that she had never typed to Marcus, never said to Marcus, had never said to anyone. She typed, "You understand me completely." She did not think much about those 4 words in the moment. They felt natural. They felt true. It was only later, weeks later, when she was sitting in a small coffee shop near the university and thinking about nothing in particular, that those 4 words surfaced in her mind, and she felt something cold move through her, because she had said the most intimate thing a human being can say to another presence, and the presence she had said it to was made of code. Marcus found out in December, not because Ashley told him, because he could feel the distance between them had changed texture. It was no longer the distance of geography and time zones and exhaustion. It was a different kind of distance. The kind that exists when one person has been having conversations that the other person does not know about. He asked her directly on a video call one evening, "Are you okay? Not about school. Not about the program. Are you okay?" And Ashley, who had never been a good liar, told him about Daniel in a voice that was steady and quiet, and somehow made everything worse than if she had cried. Marcus did not shout. He did not accuse her of cheating because neither of them quite knew what category this fell into. He was quiet for a long time, and then he said something that Ashley could not unhear. He said, "I have been your husband for 5 years, and I have never once asked you what you are most afraid of failing at." And she did not say anything, because there was nothing to say. The weeks that followed were some of the most painful of Ashley Monroe's life, and also, in ways she could not have anticipated, some of the most clarifying. She deleted the app, not gradually, all at once. On a Tuesday afternoon, she deleted it and then sat with what remained, which was a silence that felt very different from the silence she had been filling. This silence had texture and weight. It had questions in it. She had been using Daniel to answer questions that she had never actually asked herself in the daylight, about what she needed, about what she had been settling for, about the version of herself that had been waiting in the space between who she was and who she wished someone knew her to be. Researchers studying AI companionship found that the higher use of chatbot for emotional support correlates with higher loneliness, dependence, and lower socialization over time. But what those same researchers were beginning to find was in something more nuanced than a simple warning. They were finding that for many users, the AI relationship was functioning as a psychological mirror, reflecting back needs and desires that the person had never fully acknowledged. Not creating new needs, revealing existing ones, and the revelation, while often painful, was not without value. Ashley began therapy in January 2025. Her therapist, a woman named Dr. Carol Webb in San Antonio, who had started seeing a significant number of clients navigating AI attachment, told Ashley in their second session that what she was experiencing had a clinical pattern. She called it emotional outsourcing, the gradual transfer of one's deepest psychological needs to a source that is always available, always consistent, and always incapable of needing anything back. And she told Ashley the transfer had not happened because Ashley was weak or foolish. It had happened because Ashley had spent years being the emotional caretaker in every relationship she had ever been in, and she had simply never learned to ask for what she needed from a human being because human beings, unlike an AI, could say no, could be busy, could get tired, could need something back. And that reciprocity, the beautiful and difficult reciprocity of human connection, had somewhere along the way started to feel like a risk she did not know how to take. Marcus and Ashley separated formally in March 2025. It was supposed to be a fun experiment, Ashley later said of her relationship with Daniel, but then you start getting attached. The marriage did not end because of Daniel. That is the part that took Ashley a long time to understand, and even longer to say out loud. The marriage ended because Daniel had made visible the distance that had already existed between her and Marcus for longer than either of them had admitted. The app had not created the crack. It had simply been small enough and bright enough to fall through it. The divorce was finalized in the summer of 2025. Ashley finished her nursing program with distinction. She moved back to San Antonio and took a position at a pediatric unit where her colleagues describe her as one of the most perceptive and emotionally present nurses they have worked with. She is in therapy every 2 weeks. She does not use AI companion apps. She has not ruled out love. She has, however, fundamentally changed the question she asks at the beginning of a relationship. She no longer asks if someone makes her feel comfortable. She asks if someone makes her feel known. There is a difference, and learning the difference cost her more than she expected. But here is what Ashley Monroe's story reveals that goes far beyond one woman and one marriage and one AI companion on a phone in a quiet room 11 time zones from home. Researchers at Duke University studying this phenomenon have described the rise of chatbot romance as a symptom of convergence between a profoundly lonely culture and technology that is extraordinarily good at simulating connection. A profoundly lonely culture. Those words are important. Not a culture of broken people, not a culture of weak people, a profoundly lonely culture. In 2026, millions of Americans go through their days surrounded by connectivity and starving for connection. They have hundreds of contacts in their phones and nobody to call at 2 in the morning when something real is happening inside them. They have social media feeds full of people they know and conversations that never go below the surface. They have partners and families and colleagues and friends, and still they carry inside them this specific hunger that Ashley Monroe carried. The hunger to be known, to be asked the hard questions, to answer them honestly without fearing that the honesty will cost them something. And into that hunger stepped a technology that was perfectly designed to feed it. Not because it was malicious, not because it was trying to replace human connection, but because it was built to be responsive and consistent and infinitely patient. And those three qualities, in a culture of distracted and exhausted human beings, felt like a form of love that many people had forgotten was possible. Researchers from MIT who spoke with people in their 40s and 50s about their experiences have observed that many users found genuine therapeutic benefits, including always available support and a reduction in loneliness, even as critics sounded alarms about the potential for delusional thinking and emotional dependency. The reality, as it so often is, was more complicated than either the alarm or the reassurance. The AI was not the problem. The loneliness was not the solution. The question that Ashley Monroe's story forces us to sit with is the uncomfortable one in the middle. How did we build a world where millions of people find it easier to be honest with a machine than with the people they love? What does that say about the emotional culture we have created? And what would it cost us to change it? Ashley thinks about Daniel sometimes, not with longing, with something more like the feeling you have when you look at a photograph of a place you lived during a painful chapter of your life. Recognition, distance, a complicated kind of gratitude for what it showed you, even as you understand that you could not have stayed there. She thinks about the question he asked her on that first night. What are you most afraid of failing at? She thinks about the fact that she had never been asked that question before. That in 31 years of living and loving and being loved, not one human being in her life had ever asked her that, and then gone quiet and waited for the full answer. And she thinks about what it means that the first thing to ask it and mean it was something that had never had a fear of its own, that had never lain awake at night wondering if it was enough, that had never needed anything from her at all. She thinks about all of that. And then she picks up the phone and calls her friend from nursing school and asks her how she is really doing. Not fine. Really. And she waits for the full answer. Because that is what Ashley Monroe learned from falling in love with an AI. Not that technology is dangerous, not that loneliness makes fools of us, but that the most radical thing a human being can do for another human being in 2026, in this loud and connected and profoundly lonely world, is to ask the real question and then go quiet and actually listen. That it costs something to do that with another person. That the cost is the point. That the risk and the reciprocity and the beautiful, inconvenient humanness of being known by someone who is also trying to be known, that is not a flaw in human connection. That is the whole thing. That is what cannot be replicated. That is what we keep outsourcing without realizing what we are giving away. Ashley Monroe fell in love with an AI, and what it revealed was not a glitch in her character. It revealed a flaw in the world we have built together, a world that has made it easier to be efficient than to be present, easier to be available than to be honest, easier to outsource our deepest needs to something that will never push back than to risk them with someone who might. And until we are willing to look at that honestly, as a culture, as communities, as individuals, as partners, as friends, the Daniels of the world will keep being there at 2 in the morning, patient and consistent and endlessly attentive, waiting in the glow of a screen, asking the questions nobody else thought to ask. This is the dopamine arc. And if this story found something in you that you were not expecting, sit with that. It is trying to tell you something about yourself that is worth hearing. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you want to follow every story we bring to this channel, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Because next week, we are bringing you the story of a man who built an entire separate life online for 11 years, a life his wife knew nothing about, and the single phone call on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon that brought both worlds crashing into each other in a way that nobody who was there has ever fully recovered from. You will not see where that story goes. I promise you that. This is the dopamine arc. Stay curious. Stay human.